Why are most Christians conservative when Jesus is the exact opposite? Jesus lost his shit when he found people selling stuff in the church. So imagine how he'd feel about megachurches. Jesus was certainly not the right-wing, military-loving nationalist that so many conservatives make him out to be. But he also wasn't the gentle, non-judgmental, socialist hippie leftists try to make him out to be either. Most likely, he was what you could describe as a theocratic anarchist. He once invited a man to follow him, and the guy said he would after he buried his mom. And Jesus criticized him for his lack of commitment. He flipped tables and went after people with a whip. He frequently chastised his apostles. Even on the non-judgmental front, he didn't just say not to judge people. He commanded them to judge righteous judgment. While he preached forgiveness and redemption, he also preached strict adherence to the commandments of God. Jesus was a strong proponent of redemption and forgiveness. But he definitely wasn't as gentle and nice as he's always portrayed to be. Jesus didn't judge. But conservatives seem to judge people who receive abortions or the LGBTQ+ community. A bit of a stretch here. Jesus did judge people, just specifically Jews who claim to follow the law while missing the point. Well, I could go with the classic Reddit answer of religion bad, to get myself a lot of karma. But instead I'll try to answer this question the best I can. I'm open to discussion. I was raised Christian and still am. For what it's worth, I would not define myself as either conservative or liberal, and I'm not affiliated with any political party because I can't pigeonhole my entire belief system about society, economics, leadership, etc. into one homogeneous group. But I was always taught not to judge others for their decisions or background, only to love and serve them. We grew up performing a lot of service for elderly, homeless, and other vulnerable populations with my church and family. We were taught that all of us on earth are equals, and if we happen to be fortunate enough to have more wealth, we should always be sharing that with others. The Christian values which Christ taught in his day of love, forgiveness, generosity, etc., I still consider pretty commonly taught in modern churches. Whether or not it is applied by its members or not is another story, because we all know religion can be used for awful purposes and church people can be super judgmental. However, the Conservative Party isn't simply, we hate gay people and immigrants. My understanding is they are seeking less government involvement overall in many things. Countries with a stronger government involvement sometimes run the risk of infringing upon religious freedom, which religious people would obviously be opposed to. Redistributing wealth is also a tricky topic for similar reasons. Christ taught service and welfare on an individual basis, not from a government. As for abortions, that would simply be a belief related to when life begins and the responsibility of society to protect that life. In my eyes, almost all pro-life versus pro-choice arguments originate from a difference in defining what human life is and when it begins. But that's a whole other topic. The main cognitive dissonance I see with conservative Christians is wanting more government involvement in who can and cannot marry each other. It makes no sense to me that they would want a country to decide who can be a family together, other than to enforce their value system of a nuclear, traditional family. Again, it's an argument on what the government's role should be in enforcing a form of morality. Anyways, that's my 2 cents on it. Hopefully that offers some kind of insight. There's an episode of the podcast, Behind the Bastards, called, How the Rich Ate Christianity, you should listen to. I can't remember most of the details, but the gist of the story is that Christians used to vote collectively as socialists. So the wealthy formed a group to change the narrative and convince Christians they shouldn't be. ashamed of being rich, and these same wealthy people became priests and preached this message in yada 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 megachurches, and Jesus drives a four-wheel drive. The greatest irony of the whole thing is that one of the only times Jesus shows any signs of violence is toward a bunch of moneylenders and hits one of them and flips their tables and lays down some holy verse. Look up Nixon's Southern Strategy and Prosperity Evangelist. Also, John Birch Society. It's a gross simplification, but those are the seeds to the trees we have today. Sue. I'm a Christian, and I have many ideals that lean conservative, and also some that lean more liberal. I give to non-profits, volunteer with charities, and actively try to help those less fortunate than I. I don't care who you're porking, and don't care who you marry. I don't care if you've had an abortion. I'm just glad that my mom didn't. I love God, and only seek His approval. Bible says not to worry about the speck of dust in your brother's eye while you have a plank in yours. My God tells me to stay in my lane. Cognitive dissonance? Yes. If you read the whole Bible, which TBF is confusing. But I really don't get the sense from my believer friends and relatives that the content of the Bible means very much compared to social validation, tradition, the opportunity to stop thinking about material things for a couple of hours. So while we could pick at the loose threads of logic, that might be missing the point. As a conservative and a Christian, I'll throw in my 2 cents. I'm all for helping the poor. Hell, I work for a Head Start. But I'd rather see it done locally through local charities or at least the local government. Large government programs are often inefficient and inflexible and struggle to meet the needs of individual people and communities. Jesus judged the shit out of people. He was constantly calling people out, especially the Pharisees and own followers. One of the main reasons he was executed was because the Pharisees were tired of him making them look bad and threatening their power. As for abortions, I think they're murder and find them tragic. But I don't judge the woman. I want more resources available for them so that abortion isn't necessary. LGBTQ+ doesn't generally bother me. Although I do think that some of the more extreme stuff on TikTok and such is glorifying mental illness. A lot of those people need help, not affirmation. I'm all for refugees and foreigners coming to this country. The US is awesome. But I want it done legally. Right now so many people are streaming over the border that we have no idea who they are. Human trafficking is a massive business and people are being taken advantage of. I would like to see the process streamlined a bit so that it's easier to get in. But that we also know who you are. I'm pro-gun because I believe everyone should have the right to defend themselves. Not just the rich who can afford to hire bodyguards. I'm also not that physically imposing, and if someone truly wished to do me harm they could easily. And I would probably not be able to get away. A gun at least gives me a chance. Is Jesus thrilled about it? No. Probably not. But the world is fucked up, and if someone decides they want to hurt me or mine, I'll do what I have to protect us. I would also say that I take the phrase, live by the sword, die by the sword, to mean people who go looking for a fight or live violent lives. I don't think that just owning a gun and going shooting equates to that. Or even shooting someone in self-defense. I would take that more as someone who commits crimes, is in a gang, etc. TBH, I feel like Christian conservatives aren't huge Christians, but are more American nationalists. Because they don't actually give a shit about the message. More about weaponizing it. It's more about superiority, control and religious domination than anything else at this point. Because religion in general, and especially modern religion, has nothing to do with belief anymore. Okay, so a lot of good answers here, but in my experience with Christian conservatives, it's just about tradition and just following what your parents and community teach. Conservatism is just upholding the status quo. A lot of Western countries are majority and historically Christian. We could go into the psychology behind conservatism and why people feel the need to preserve the way things are, or return to what was. But I put my point out there and that's enough for me. The basic ideology is, this is what we have had. It worked for me. We should keep it this way. Hence being the last to let go of antiquated thoughts and behaviors. Lots of cherry-picking and stretching ideologies. I would educate yourself a little. A lot. More on Christianity, conservatism, and liberalism before holding such an opinion, as it doesn't seem you understand much of any of them. Well, Jesus wouldn't be in favor of the LGBTQ+ community, so there's that. Most Christians are not like that. Just a loud subsection. Many average Christians do try to live as Jesus did. Because Jesus instructs the individual to help the widows and orphans. He didn't instruct people to put the government in a place of responsibility to do that. He said that the one who doesn't work should not eat. Jesus instructed us to love one another, but did not instruct us to condone sin or accept or encourage one's lifestyle of sin. He instructs us to love justice but to not cast pearls before swine. He instructs us on the sanctity of life and makes it clear that failing to turn from the pursuit of sin is choosing to love the world and love the sin more than God and His instruction. Jesus is for the individual, not the nation, for the person, not the government, though He instructs us to obey the laws of the land insofar as they don't oppose God's instruction. Jesus demonstrated violence toward the hawkers at the temple who were selling and trading on temple grounds by flipping their tables and driving them out with whips. He also instructed His disciples to strap on their sword and if they didn't have one, to sell their cloak and buy one. Living by the sword means the use or threat of violence as a means of making a living. But carrying a sword is not the same. It implies that the sword is available to be used to defend oneself. Pro-gun does not mean pro-violence. Please choose your words carefully. Many people who are pro-gun are so strictly for self-defense of themselves, family, or property, many of whom don't even take their firearms off their home property. Many people who are pro-gun also are not even owners of guns, but respect the constitutional right to do so, for fellow citizens and authoritative forces. It's very easy to twist words to sound how you wish. And it's very easy to misinterpret someone else's views. Communication is key. Know your audience. Understand their views, whether you agree with them or not. But always look at the whole picture, not just the parts you like. Jesus wanted to change individual hearts, not change government policy. Many Christians donate heavily to charities that help and feed the poor. But many also believe, as I do, that government programs established to help the poor are fraught with waste and mismanagement, and may create adverse incentives that actually enable the poor to remain poor. Short answer: they've never read the Bible.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. KcAfterHours is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.